Hey everyone, today we're diving into a deeply personal explainer. I'm actually stepping into the role of both your host and the subject, as an older me looks back at, well, my youth. We're heading back to the incredibly lush, vibrant slopes of Mount Kenya to really unpack a defining journey, the one that shaped exactly who I am today. Together, we're going to map out the emotional geography of first love, the invisible but extremely heavy barriers of social class, and those very distinct cultural expectations placed upon me as a young village man, just trying to figure it all out. So let's jump right in. And to do that, we actually need to start at the end with the crushing weight of four simple words. I am sorry, Robbie. Spoken by a smiling girl named Jay, those words, man, they carried a devastating finality. For a really long time, they were just impossible to forget. They literally echoed in my mind for years. But to truly grasp why that specific moment was so absolutely heartbreaking and why those words carried so much weight, we have to go back. We need to look at the world that built me.
Because to understand that heartbreak, you first have to understand the sensory-rich rural landscape of Embu County. It was a vibrant, evergreen land with this truly cinematic scale to it. I grew up surrounded by these sweeping, breathtaking views. Imagine the rich, earthy smell of rain hitting the red tea soil, the thick morning mist drifting lazily over lush banana groves, and the constant, everyday rhythm of villagers harvesting crops and grazing livestock. This wasn't just a backdrop. These daily traditional rural activities completely shaped my early sense of self.
But there was a quiet, painful divide hidden within that beautiful landscape. On one side, you had these prosperous, sprawling emerald tea and coffee estates, families who had inherited rich, fertile lands. And on the other side, well, that was my reality. My father's modest, rocky, and really struggling farm plot. I was acutely aware of this contrast from a very young age. Quietly observing how others perceived my family status planted this deep, persistent feeling of inadequacy inside me. It was an awareness of my humble background that I just couldn't shake off. And that quiet feeling of inadequacy, it followed me right through the rustic stone gates of my high school. King Dave Secondary School was a place built on rigid boarding school discipline. Everyone affectionately, and honestly maybe a bit nervously, called it the military base. The whole atmosphere of strict order, literally marching to class, and this heavy academic duty completely defined my daily teenage life. Living in that environment created a constant internal tension for me. On one hand, I had my strict academic duties and these massive expectations placed upon me to, secure a future. But on the other hand, I had my sanctuary, the drama club. I threw myself into it, energetic rehearsals, traditional dancing, and the warm laughter of local community gatherings. Those gatherings were so crucial in building my teenage identity. It was literally the only place I could break free from that rigid discipline and all my own insecurities. It was right in the middle of this mix of discipline and drama that my whole world shifted. That's when I met Jay. We were both in Form 1, though she tended to prosperous St. Angela Girls' School. I vividly remember my extreme nervousness about our first meeting, but she had this incredibly friendly smile that just instantly put my anxious mind at ease. When we were apart, I'd constantly imagine these little snippets of heartfelt conversations between us. Her softly asking me about my day, or me telling a joke just to hear her laugh. We developed this quiet, specific bond that quickly became the absolute center of my teenage universe. 15. That was the exact number of kilometers separating my school from hers. Now, in the grand scheme of the world, 15 kilometers is nothing, right? But for a teenage village boy with absolutely zero money, separated by the winding hills and deep valleys of Mount Kenya, that distance felt like 1,000,000 miles. Every single day, the mountains stood between us. It was a beautiful, but imposing, reminder of the massive social and physical barriers keeping us apart. So you can imagine the sheer electricity in the room when our drama club teacher announced a long-awaited invitation. St. Angela Girls' Secondary School had invited us to perform. The room completely erupted in cheers, friends high-fiving and laughing. But my private thoughts? They rushed instantly to one thing. The desperate hope of finally seeing Jay. This wasn't just a school trip to me. It was an unexpected bridge across those 15 kilometers. Look, truth be told, my heart was far more interested in the journey than the performance itself. We chose to put on a comedy, and I was assigned only a very small role. But I really didn't care about stage time. I spent all the rehearsals just chatting and soaking in the atmosphere. Because, honestly, the play was simply the vehicle. It was the excuse I so desperately needed to travel across the mountain to the girl who held all my attention. But with all that immense hope came an equally powerful fear. Lying awake in the quiet, rustic dormitory at night, I was consumed by this quiet, intense dread of acting poorly in front of her. My mind would just race with these brief internal monologues, a quiet panic about how her friends might perceive my family status. What if the cultural divide between her prosperous surroundings and my rocky family farm was just too obvious? The emotional toll of carrying around this secret affection, especially in such a restrictive environment, was totally exhausting.
Eventually, the big day arrived. Since our school couldn't afford an official bus, we packed our costumes into a hired, colorful rural matatu on a bright Saturday afternoon. It was pure chaos and joy. Friends waved goodbye as the roar of the engine and the sharp smell of diesel mixed with the fresh mountain air. We piled in shoulder to shoulder, and that long-awaited journey finally began.
That Matatu ride, it was a profound emotional progression. At departure, there was joyful singing, our loud laughter echoing against the quiet slopes of the mountain. But midway through, I kind of fell into this deepening confusion. I found myself just quietly observing the winding, dusty roads. By the time we actually approached her school, my joy had completely evaporated. It was replaced by the crushing weight of unspoken feelings and fear. The closer we got, the heavier my secret felt. And all the while, the landscape outside the window was unfolding with this sweeping, cinematic scale. We passed breathtaking views of Mount Kenya's snow-capped peaks and winding roads cutting through deep valleys. The visual transitions between our dusty road journey and the sweeping majesty of the emerald tea farms were just spectacular. As I stared out the window, my quiet observations of this dramatic nature perfectly mirrored my own budding feelings. Those lingering, towering mountain peaks felt like a symbol of my own distant, beautiful, and perhaps unreachable hopes.
Finally, as the Matatu crested a steep hill, the pristine campus of St. Angela Girls came into view. I pressed my face right against the glass, my heart just hammering in my chest. And there she was. Through the window, I quietly observed Jay walking among her own group of friends. Seeing her there in her prosperous element, framed by that dramatic, towering mountain backdrop during my most vulnerable moment, it made reality crash down on me. None of us in that Matatu knew this journey would change my life forever. As the other boys cheered, getting ready for the play, I prepared to step off the bus completely paralyzed by one terrifying thought. How could I, a boy from a struggling rocky farm, ever cross the invisible cultural divide between my reality and hers? I was about to find out, and it would lead directly to those 4 heartbreaking words. So I want to leave you with this. Think about the invisible barriers in your own early life. What mountains did you have to cross to find out who you are? Thank you so much for exploring this memoir with me today.